The crystalline towers of Veltar stretched into the amber sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns of the draconian homeworld. Within the highest spire, Princess Alexandra paced the length of her chambers, her scaled tail leaving deep gouges in the platinum floor. Each step echoed with barely contained fury, and wisps of smoke curled from her nostrils. The emergency council session had ended 3 hours ago, but the words still burned in her mind like acid. Forbidden, unnatural, disgraceful to the bloodline. The Draconian High Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decreed that her union with Marcus Chun, a human, was not merely inadvisable, but absolutely prohibited under ancient law. Princess, came a soft voice from the entrance. Serthak, her most trusted advisor, stepped into the chamber with the cautious movements of someone approaching a volcano. His midnight blue scales were dulled with age, but his golden eyes held the same fierce intelligence that had served 3 generations of the royal family. Your father wishes to speak with you. Alexandra whirled to face him, her emerald scales shimmering with an inner fire. At 8 feet tall in her natural form, she was considered petite by draconian standards, but the raw power radiating from her would have made even the largest war dragon step back. Let me guess. He wants to remind me of my duty to the realm, my responsibility to produce a pure heir for the throne. Serthak's expression softened. He had watched this princess grow from a curious hatchling into the most formidable diplomat in known space. Her ability to bridge cultures and forge alliances had brought unprecedented prosperity to their empire. Now that same gift was being turned against her. Your Highness, he said carefully, perhaps if you spoke with him about the human's achievements. His contributions to our understanding of quantum mechanics have revolutionized our faster-than-light travel systems. His work with our scientists has. You think I haven't tried that? Alexandra's laugh was bitter, sending small flames dancing around her teeth. I've presented Marcus's accomplishments to the Council 17 times. His innovations have saved billions of lives across the galaxy. His diplomatic work prevented 3 wars. His mathematical theories have advanced our civilization by centuries. And do you know what Councilor Mordak said? Serta Gwinsith. Mordak was old guard conservative, the type who believed that anything not explicitly draconian was inherently inferior. He said that a pet might perform useful tricks, but that doesn't make it suitable for breeding with nobility. The temperature in the room spiked as Alexandra's control slipped. The air itself seemed to shimmer with heat. Apechi, Sirtak, he called the most brilliant mind I've ever encountered, pet. The old advisor nodded slowly. He had served long enough to know when the royal temper was building towards something spectacular. What will you do, princess? Alexandra moved to the massive window overlooking the capital city. Below, millions of draconians went about their daily lives, their scales glinting in the afternoon light. Aerial taxi services wove between the towers, their drivers following traffic patterns that Marcus had helped optimize. The fusion reactors powering the city used safety protocols that Marcus had developed. Even the communication networks relied on algorithms he had written. The irony was not lost on her. This human they called inferior had already become integral to their society. His fingerprints were on every major technological advancement of the past 5 years. Yet because he lacked scales and couldn't breathe fire, he was deemed unworthy. Princess, Sertak prompted gently. Tell me, old friend, she said without turning from the window, what do you know of the claiming rights? Serthak's pupils dilated in shock. Your Highness, those are ancient customs, pre-civilization. They haven't been invoked in over 3,000 years. But they haven't been abolished either, have they? Alexandra finally turned, and Serthak saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. It was the same look her great-grandmother had worn during the rebellion of the 7 moons, when she'd torn apart an entire enemy fleet with nothing but her claws and fury. The claiming rights supersede all other marriage laws, she continued. If a dragon chooses a mate and performs the ritual binding, no force in the galaxy can break it. Not the High Council, Not the Emperor himself, not even death. Princess, please, Serthak stepped forward urgently. The claiming rights are dangerous. They require sacrifices, blood bonding at a genetic level, and they must be performed in the presence of the ancient flames, yes. I know. Zewixandra moved to her private study and began pulling down texts that hadn't been opened in centuries. The ritual must take place at the Temple of First Fire, with both participants willing to risk their lives for the bond. Serthak felt ancient dread settling in his stomach. The Temple of First Fire was located in the heart of the burning mountains, where the planet's molten core came closest to the surface. It was a place of such intense heat that even adult dragons could survive only briefly. For a human, he'll die, Serthak said flatly. The moment Marcus sets foot in that temple, the heat will kill him. Not if I'm with him. Zewixandra's eyes gleamed with dangerous certainty. The binding ritual allows one partner to share their natural resistances with the other. If I can maintain perfect control during the ceremony, I can shield him from the worst of it. If you can maintain control, Serthak repeated. Princess, the claiming rights are designed to strip away all pretense, all civilization. They reduce participants to their most primal selves. Even if you enter the temple with perfect discipline, the ritual itself will drive you to the edge of madness. Then, I'll have to be stronger than madness. The conviction in her voice left no room for argument. Serthak had known this moment would come eventually. From the day a young human mathematician had first set foot in the royal court, he had watched the princess change. Her interest in Marcus had begun as intellectual curiosity. Here was an alien mind that could match her own formidable intelligence. But curiosity had grown into respect, respect into friendship, and friendship into something deeper. The old advisor had seen them together in unguarded moments. He had watched Marcus explain complex theorems while Zewixandra hung on every word, her predatory focus entirely captured. He had seen the gentle way Marcus touched her arm when making a point, showing no fear of her lethal claws. Most tellingly, he had witnessed the princess in her human form, a shape she rarely adopted, sitting beside Marcus in the palace gardens, simply talking and laughing like any young couple in love. It was not the political alliance that concerned the council. It was the genuine emotion. Dragons were not supposed to love other species with such intensity. Have you told him? Serthak asked quietly. About my feelings? Yes. About the claiming rights? She hesitated. Not yet. Princess, he has a right to know what you're asking of him. The ritual will change him on a fundamental level. His DNA will be permanently altered. He'll gain some of our longevity, our resilience, but he'll also develop appetites that humans don't normally possess. You mean he'll start seeing other species as food? Zewixandra said bluntly. I know. The predatory instincts are part of the bonding process. More than that, if the ritual succeeds, he'll become something new. Not fully human, not fully dragon, but something in between. There's no going back from that level of transformation. Zewixandra was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ancient text spread before her. Do you think it's fair to ask that of him? I think, Serthak said carefully, that Marcus Chun is the most remarkable human I've ever encountered. I've watched him adapt to our culture, master our technology, and earn the respect of beings that have never shown deference to any alien species. If anyone could survive such a transformation and remain himself, it would be him. But that's not what you think I should do. The old advisor sighed. What I think, Princess, is that you're already bound to him in every way that matters. I've seen how you look at each other. I've seen how he makes you laugh, how you challenge his assumptions. You found something that most beings search for their entire lives. Then, why do I hear a but coming? Because the council will not simply accept this. Even if you succeed in the claiming rights, even if Marcus survives the transformation, they will never forgive the challenge to their authority. You'll be starting a war. Good. The word came out with such cold finality that frost began forming on the windows despite the planet's tropical heat. I'm tired of their bigotry. I'm tired of their small-mindedness. And I'm especially tired of their assumption that I'll quietly submit to whatever political marriage they arrange for me. Serthak studied her face, seeing the determination that had made her the most effective princess in their empire's history. What do you need from me? Help me contact Marcus, privately, and begin making arrangements for a journey to the Burning Mountains. Princess, if you go through with this, there will be consequences beyond just your personal situation. The council will see it as an act of rebellion. They may even try to remove you from the succession. Then, they'll learn what a mistake that would be. Steam began rising from Xandra's scales as her internal temperature climbed. I've spent my entire adult life serving this empire. I've negotiated treaties that brought peace to entire sectors. I've established trade relationships that have made us the wealthiest civilization in local space. I've earned my place through merit and achievement, not just bloodline. She turned to face him fully, and Serthak saw something in her expression that reminded him of her great-grandmother during the war years. If they want to challenge my right to choose my own mate, they're welcome to try. But they should remember that I am not just a princess. I'm a dragon, and dragons protect what belongs to them. And Marcus? Does he belong to you? For the first time since the conversation began, Xander smiled. It was an expression full of warmth and possessiveness and absolute certainty. It chose me, Sertak. Long before the council made their declaration, long before any of this political maneuvering began, he chose me. Not for what I could give him, not for political advantage, but because he sees who I am beneath the scales and fire. Then, you believe he'll agree to the claiming rights? I believe Marcus Chun is the bravest person I've ever known. When the Regelian plague threatened to wipe out our outer colonies, he volunteered to test the experimental treatment on himself. When the trade negotiations with the Centauri Federation broke down, he spent 6 months in isolation aboard their ship, working around the clock to find a mathematical proof that satisfied their cultural requirements for honor. She moved back to the window, her gaze distant. He once told me that humans have a saying, "Fortune favors the bold." If that's true, then we should be the most fortunate beings in the galaxy. Sertak nodded slowly. He had his doubts about the wisdom of this course, but he had learned long ago not to underestimate either the princess's determination or her human companion's resilience. I'll make the arrangements. How soon do you want to speak with him? Tonight. After the court festivities end and the palace grows quiet. And Serthak, yes, princess. Thank you for not trying to talk me out of this. The old advisor allowed himself a small smile. Your Highness, I've been serving the royal family for 70 years. I've learned that when a dragon makes up their mind about something truly important, the wisest course is to help them achieve it safely rather than try and stand in their way. As Serthak left to make the necessary arrangements, Xandra returned to her study of the ancient texts. The claiming rights were indeed dangerous, far more so than she had admitted to her advisor. The ritual required both participants to offer their life essence to the ancient flames, trusting that their bond was strong enough to survive the process. Many couples had attempted the rites over the centuries. Perhaps half had survived. Of those who lived, some had been driven mad by the intensity of the connection. Others had emerged so fundamentally changed that they were no longer recognizable as their former selves. But for those few who succeeded completely, the bond was said to be unbreakable. Their life forces became intertwined at the quantum level, allowing them to share not just emotions and thoughts, but actual physical sensations and capabilities. A human bound to a dragon could survive in space, withstand extreme temperatures, even regenerate from injuries that would normally be fatal. The price for such gifts was always high. The human would gain draconian appetites and instincts, including the need to periodically consume raw meat and the territorial aggression that came with being an apex predator. They would outlive their own species by millennia, watching human civilization rise and fall while they remained essentially unchanged. Was it fair to ask someone to make such a sacrifice? Xandra honestly didn't know, but she knew that the alternative, a life without Marcus, was unthinkable. They had found something precious together, something worth protecting against any opposition. As the twin suns set beyond the crystalline towers, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Princess Alexandra made her decision. Tomorrow, she would present Marcus with the choice that would determine both their futures. Tonight, she would prepare for war. Because if the High Council thought they could dictate the heart of a dragon princess, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they could be. The ancient flames had not seen a claiming right in 3,000 years. Soon, they would witness either the birth of an unbreakable bond or the deaths of two beings foolish enough to challenge the natural order. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. Marcus Chun stood in the observation deck of the orbital research station, watching the dance of particles in the quantum field generator below. The mathematics were beautiful in their complexity, equations that described the fundamental forces holding reality together. 3 years ago, this level of theoretical physics would have been beyond human understanding. Now, thanks to draconian knowledge and his own relentless curiosity, he could see patterns that would revolutionize both civilizations. Dr. Chun, the voice belonged to Kethvar, his primary research partner. The young dragon's copper scales gleamed under the station's artificial lighting as he approached with a data pad in his claws. The dimensional stability readings are fluctuating again. The harmonic frequency appears to be shifting by approximately 0.3 terahertz every 17 seconds. Marcus finished without looking away from the display. It's not random fluctuation. There's an underlying pattern that suggests the quantum foam itself is responding to our observations. Kethvar's pupils dilated, the draconian equivalent of raised eyebrows. Even after 3 years of collaboration, his human colleague's ability to intuitively grasp complex relationships continued to amaze him. How did you know without seeing the data? The visual distortion in the particle stream follows a predictable cascade pattern. If you know what to look for, you can read the mathematics in the light itself. Marcus finally turned from the window, his dark eyes bright with the kind of intellectual excitement that had first caught Princess Alexandra's attention. Run a harmonic analysis on the frequency shifts. I suspect we'll find they match the prime number sequence. As Kethvar moved to implement the suggestion, Marcus allowed his mind to wander. The past 3 years on the draconian homeworld had been the most fulfilling of his life. The intellectual challenges were beyond anything Earth's scientific community could offer, but it wasn't just the research that kept him here. It was her. Princess Alexandra had approached him initially as a diplomatic curiosity, the first human to be granted extended research privileges in the Draconian Empire. Their first conversation had lasted 14 hours and covered everything from quantum mechanics to ancient poetry. Marcus had been struck not just by her intelligence, but by the way her mind worked. Where human logic tended to be linear, her thinking was multidimensional, approaching problems from angles he never would have considered. That intellectual attraction had deepened over time into something much more complex. He had seen her in formal court sessions, wielding her authority with precision and grace. He had worked alongside her during crisis negotiations, watching her navigate cultural differences that would have destroyed other diplomatic efforts. And, in private moments, he had discovered a vulnerability beneath her regal bearing that made his heart ache. Dr. Chun, Kethvar's voice interrupted his thoughts. You were right about the prime number sequence. The pattern is perfect. How did you know? Lucky guess, Marcus replied, though they both knew better. His intuitive leaps had become legendary among the research staff. What's our next step? Actually, sir, there's a message for you. From the palace. High-priority encryption. Marcus felt a familiar flutter of anticipation. High-priority messages from the palace usually meant HFY Alexandra wanted to discuss some new theoretical challenge or share a breakthrough in her own research. Their intellectual partnership had evolved into something resembling friendship, though Marcus suspected, hoped, it might be developing into something deeper. I'll take it in my private office, he said. Continue the harmonic analysis and document everything. This could be the breakthrough we've been looking for. The message was brief, but intriguing. Zoexandra requested his presence in her private chambers that evening for a matter of urgent personal importance. No details, no hints about the subject, just an invitation and an undercurrent of tension that came through even in the formal diplomatic language. Marcus spent the rest of the day trying to focus on his research, but his mind kept drifting to possibilities. Had something happened with the trade negotiations? Was there a new scientific project that required his expertise? Or, and this possibility made his pulse quicken, was this about something more personal? Their relationship existed in a carefully maintained space between professional collaboration and personal attraction. Both were acutely aware of the cultural and political complications that would arise from anything more intimate. Zoexandra was not just any dragon. She was heir to one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Marcus was not just any human. He was a representative of his species, and his actions would be scrutinized by both civilizations. But in quiet moments between formal meetings, he had caught her looking at him with an expression that suggested she was fighting the same internal battle he was. As evening approached, Marcus made his way through the palace corridors with their familiar blend of ancient architecture and modern technology. Crystalline support beams that had been grown rather than built supported ceilings that incorporated quantum computational matrices. The fusion of old and new reflected the draconian culture itself, proud of their heritage but eager to embrace innovation. The guards at the princess's chambers recognized him immediately. Over the past 3 years, his visits had become routine enough that security no longer required special clearance. Still, he noticed they seemed more alert tonight, their scaled faces reflecting an underlying tension. Dr. Chun, Serthak, greeted him at the chamber entrance. The old advisor's expression was unreadable, but Marcus caught a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. Her Highness is waiting for you in her private study. The study was a reflection of Zoexandra's complex personality. Ancient texts written in high draconic shared shelf space with cutting-edge scientific journals. Artwork depicting historical dragon heroes hung beside mathematical proofs that Marcus had helped her develop. It was a room that bridged past and future, tradition and innovation. Zoexandra stood beside the great window overlooking the city, her silhouette outlined against the glow of the twin moons. She had chosen her natural form tonight, 8 feet of scaled elegance with an inner fire that made the air shimmer around her. She was magnificent, and Marcus felt the familiar catch in his throat that accompanied her presence. "Marcus," she said without turning, "thank you for coming." "Always," he replied simply. It was true. He would have crossed the galaxy if she had asked. She finally faced him, and he saw something in her expression that sent alarm bells ringing in his mind. Her emerald scales were dulled with stress, and her golden eyes held a mixture of determination and pain that he had never seen before. "We need to talk," she said. "About us. About our future. About choices that can't be undone." Marcus felt his pulse accelerate. "What's happened?" "The High Council has formally forbidden any union between us," she said without preamble. This afternoon, they passed a resolution declaring such a marriage to be against the natural order and detrimental to the purity of the royal bloodline. The words hit him like a physical blow. He had known this day might come. The political implications of their relationship had always been obvious. But hearing it stated so bluntly, reduced to bureaucratic language about bloodline purity, made him feel suddenly sick. "I see," he managed. "And you agree with their assessment?" The question sparked something dangerous in Zoexandra's eyes. For a moment, the temperature in the room spiked as her control slipped. "How can you even ask me that?" "Because I need to hear you say it." Marcus stepped closer, his human instincts warning him to be careful, but his heart overriding his caution. "I need to know whether this is just political inconvenience or whether you believe they're right about us being unnatural." "Unnatural," she repeated, tasting the word like poison. "They call us unnatural because you don't have scales, because you can't breathe fire, Because your lifespan is shorter than ours. As if any of that matters compared to what we've built together. What have we built together? The question came out more vulnerable than he intended. We've never actually discussed where this was heading. We've danced around it for 3 years, but we've never said the words out loud. Zhuaixindra was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. I love you, Marcus-chun. I love your mind, and your courage, and your terrible habit of making jokes during diplomatic crises. I love the way you see patterns in chaos, and find beauty in mathematical equations. I love that you look at me and see Zhuaixindra first, princess second. The admission hit him with the force of a revelation. 3 years of careful professional distance, of maintaining appropriate boundaries, of pretending their attraction was merely intellectual. All of it swept away in a handful of words. I love you too, he said, and felt something in his chest unclench that he hadn't even realized was tight. I have for 2 years now, maybe longer. Then you understand why the council's decision is unacceptable to me. Something in her tone made him wary. What are you thinking? There's a way around their prohibition. An ancient law that supersedes all modern marriage customs. She moved to her desk and indicated the old text spread across its surface. The claiming rights. A ritual binding that cannot be broken by any earthly authority. Marcus approached the books, his scientific mind automatically cataloging details. The writing was an archaic high draconic, but he had learned enough of the language to pick out key phrases. What he read made his blood run cold. These rituals, he said carefully, they're not just ceremonial, are they? No, they require both participants to offer their life essence to the ancient flames. The process changes both individuals on a fundamental level, binding them together at the quantum level of existence. And the survival rate? 600 hesitated. Historically, about 50%, and the other 50% die in the flames. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening temperature. You're asking me to risk my life for a marriage ceremony. I'm asking if you love me enough to risk everything for a bond that nothing in this universe can break. Her voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Not fear of the flames, but fear of his answer. Marcus studied the ancient text, his mathematician's mind automatically analyzing probabilities and risk factors. A 50% survival rate was better odds than many dangerous human endeavors. Space exploration in the early days, experimental medical procedures, combat missions during wartime. But those have been professional risks taken for abstract goals. This was personal, immediate, and irreversible. Tell me about the changes, he said. What happens to someone who survives the bonding? The human partner gains enhanced longevity, potentially thousands of years instead of decades. Increased physical resilience, resistance to disease, and injury. Some of our sensory capabilities. She paused. And some of our instincts. The predatory ones? Yes. You would develop appetites that humans don't normally possess. A need for raw meat, territorial instincts, heightened aggression under certain circumstances. You would still be you, but you would be more than you were. Marcus absorbed this information with the same methodical approach he brought to complex scientific problems. Transformation at a genetic level, gaining capabilities no human had ever possessed, becoming something new and unprecedented. The scientist in him was fascinated. The human in him was terrified. And you, he asked, what changes would you undergo? Less dramatic. Dragons are already apex predators with extended lifespans. I might gain some of your human flexibility of thought, your ability to see solutions that pure draconian logic might miss. But the primary change would be emotional. The bond creates a connection that allows us to share thoughts, feelings, even physical sensations. A psychic link, something like that, joined at the level of consciousness itself. Marcus walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. Below, millions of beings were going about their ordinary lives, unaware that two individuals were contemplating a choice that would defy the natural order of the galaxy. The council will see this as an act of rebellion, he said. Yes, they'll try to stop us. Yes, and if they can't stop us, they'll try to punish us afterward. Almost certainly. Marcus turned back to face her. You would give up your position, your inheritance, your future as empress, for me? I would give up everything for you, she said simply. Because without you, none of the rest matters. The conviction in her voice left no room for doubt. This was not a decision made in the heat of passion or political frustration. This was the result of careful consideration by one of the most intelligent beings he had ever known. When will we have to do this? He asked. Soon, before the council can organize formal opposition. I estimate we have perhaps a week before they begin taking active steps to prevent any kind of union. And the location? The Temple of First Fire in the Burning Mountains, where the planet's core comes closest to the surface and the ancient flames burn eternally. Marcus had heard of the place, a site so sacred to dragon culture that even mentioning it casually was considered disrespectful. It was also, according to every scientific report he had read, one of the most hostile environments on the planet. The ambient temperature alone would kill most humans within minutes. I couldn't survive the journey there, let alone the ceremony, he pointed out. Not alone, Alexander agreed. But if you're willing to trust me, I can shield you during the ritual. The bonding process allows me to share my natural resistances with you, protecting you from the worst of the heat. If you maintain perfect control during a ceremony designed to strip away all civilized restraints. Yes, the scope of what she was proposing began to sink in. Not just risking their lives, but doing so in a way that required absolute trust and perfect execution. One moment of lost concentration on her part. One instant where the ritual overwhelmed her ability to protect him, and he would be reduced to ash. You're certain this is what you want? He asked. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. And you're certain I can survive it? For the first time, Alexander hesitated. No, I'm not certain. I believe you can, based on everything I know about human adaptability and your own extraordinary resilience. But certainty? No, I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. Marcus considered this admission. Many people in her position would have offered false reassurances, promised outcomes they couldn't guarantee. The fact that she was being brutally honest about the risks only reinforced his respect for her. If I agree, he said slowly, and we survive, what happens next? We become something new, a bonded pair unlike anything the galaxy has seen before. We'll have enemies, beings who see our union as an abomination. But we'll also have capabilities that neither of our species possesses individually. And if we don't survive, then we'll have died together rather than living apart. The stark simplicity of the choice struck him. Safety and separation, or risk and unity. A comfortable life bound by others' prejudices, or a dangerous chance at something unprecedented. Marcus thought about his life before coming to the draconian homeworld. Successful by human standards, but ultimately limited by the boundaries of his species' knowledge and capabilities. 3 years with Alexandra had shown him possibilities he never could have imagined. Their collaborative research had already pushed both civilizations forward by decades. What could they accomplish if they were truly bound together, sharing not just ideas, but consciousness itself? He thought about the look in her eyes when she worked through a particularly challenging mathematical proof. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes during formal dinners. The quiet conversations they had shared in this very room, discussing everything from quantum mechanics to ancient poetry. The growing certainty that she was not just his intellectual equal, but the other half of something he hadn't even known was incomplete. The ancient flames, he said finally, do they have any special significance beyond their role in the ceremony? According to tradition, they represent the first fire breathed by the original dragons, the source from which all draconian life emerged. To face them is to confront the most primal aspects of our nature. And you believe that's what I need to do? Confront the primal aspects of dragon nature. I believe, Alexandra said carefully, that if you're going to truly join our species, you need to understand what you're becoming. The flames don't just test your physical resilience. They test your willingness to embrace predatory instincts that humans don't normally possess. Marcus nodded slowly. He had seen glimpses of those instincts in Zyxandra. The way her pupils dilated when she was angry, the subtle shift in her posture when she felt threatened. If he went through with this transformation, he would need to learn to manage similar impulses. "One more question," he said. "Are you doing this because you love me, or because you want to prove something to the council?" The question clearly caught her off guard. For a moment, her carefully maintained composure slipped, and he saw the raw vulnerability beneath. "Both," she admitted. "I won't lie to you about that. I love you enough to risk everything for you. But I'm also angry enough at their presumption to want to show them exactly how wrong they are about us. And you can live with that? With making the most important decision of our lives partly out of spite? Can you?" Marcus considered the question seriously. He had spent most of his life being cautious, calculating risks, making safe choices. It had served him well professionally, but it had also meant missing opportunities that might have led to extraordinary discoveries. This was perhaps the ultimate example, a choice that could destroy them or transform them into something beyond current understanding. "Yes," he said finally, "I can live with spite as a motivating factor, as long as love is the primary one." Relief flooded Zyxandra's expression. "Then you'll do it? You'll risk the claiming rights." "I'll do it. Not because I'm not afraid. I'm terrified. But because 3 years ago, I came here looking for knowledge, and instead I found something I didn't even know I was missing. If there's a chance to make that permanent, to build something unprecedented together, then yes, I'll risk everything for that chance." She crossed the room in 2 quick strides and pulled him into an embrace that was careful not to injure him with her claws, but fierce enough to leave no doubt about her emotions. For a moment, they simply held each other, 2 beings from different worlds contemplating a future that would make them something entirely new. "We should begin preparations immediately," she said when they finally separated. "The journey to the Burning Mountains will take several days, and we'll need to avoid council surveillance. What about my research? My colleagues will ask questions if I suddenly disappear. Leave that to Serthak. He's already developing a cover story about a classified project that requires temporary isolation." She paused. "Marcus, are you sure about this? Once we begin, there's no turning back." He looked at her, really looked, taking in the scales that caught the light like living emeralds, the golden eyes that held intelligence and humor and fierce determination, the careful way she held herself to avoid accidentally damaging the more fragile object around her. In 3 years, she had become not just his closest friend and research partner, but the person he trusted most in either civilization. "I'm sure," he said. "Fortune favors the bold, right?" Her answering smile was radiant enough to light the room. "Then, let's see just how favored we can be." As they began planning their journey to the ancient flames, neither Marcus nor Zyxandra noticed the small monitoring device that had recorded their entire conversation. Nor did they see the figure who retrieved the device from its hiding place in the corridor outside the chamber. The High Council would have advance warning of their plans. The path to the claiming rights would not be as simple as they hoped. But it was too late for second thoughts now. The choice had been made, and 2 beings who should never have found each other according to the natural order were about to challenge the foundations of civilization itself. The ancient flames were waiting. The underground tunnels beneath the palace had not been used for their original purpose in over 2 centuries. Built during the War of 7 Moons as escape routes for the royal family, they now served mainly as storage for historical artifacts and emergency supplies. The air was stale and filled with the scent of old stone, but they provided the perfect cover for a clandestine departure. Marcus followed Zyxandra through the narrow passages, his human eyes struggling to adjust to the minimal lighting. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who could see perfectly in near darkness, occasionally pausing to ensure he could keep up. The supplies they carried were minimal. Everything they needed for the journey had been cached along the route weeks ago by Serthak's carefully selected agents. "How far?" Marcus whispered, though the thick stone walls would muffle their voices from any listening devices above. "Another kilometer to the exit point," the Wyxendra replied softly. "From there, it's 3 days' journey to the Burning Mountains, assuming we can avoid the Council's search parties." The search parties were an unwelcome complication. News of their planned union had leaked. Marcus suspected the monitoring device they had discovered too late in Zoexander's chambers, and the High Council had moved swiftly to prevent what they saw as an act of rebellion. Royal guards were already stationed at the primary transportation hubs, and aerial surveillance drones were sweeping the surrounding countryside. But Serthak had planned for this contingency. The old advisor had spent 6 decades serving the royal family, and he understood better than anyone how to move through the empire without detection. His network of loyal agents had been carefully cultivated over the years, individuals who owed their positions to merit rather than political connections, and who understood that sometimes the crown's best interests diverged from the council's prejudices. They reached the tunnel exit as the first moon was setting, leaving only the dimmer light of the second to illuminate their escape. The exit was concealed within a natural cave formation several kilometers from the palace, surrounded by dense forest that would provide cover for the initial phase of their journey. "Transport should be arriving soon," Wyxendra said, checking the chronometer embedded in her scales. Kethvar volunteered to pilot the cargo hauler personally. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for his research partner. The young dragon had not asked for details when Serthak approached him, simply nodding and agreeing to help however he could. It was a reminder that their relationship had supporters even among the younger generation of dragons, beings who saw potential in cross-species collaboration rather than contamination. The sound of approaching engines broke the forest silence. A heavy cargo hauler, the type used for transporting mining equipment to remote locations, settled into the clearing with the careful precision of an experienced pilot. Its running lights were dimmed to minimum visibility, and its hull bore the markings of a routine geological survey mission. Kethvar emerged from the pilot compartment, his copper scales dulled with nervous energy. "Your Highness, Dr. Chun, I filed a flight plan for the Korath mining station. That should give us cover for most of the journey. Are you certain about this course of action?" "We're certain," the Wyxendra replied firmly. "And Kethvar? Thank you. This won't be forgotten." The young dragon's pupils dilated with emotion. "Your Highness, your research partnership with Dr. Chun has revolutionized our understanding of quantum mechanics. The Council's prohibition is short-sighted. If there's anything I can do to help you prove them wrong, I'm honored to assist." They loaded their minimal supplies into the cargo hold and settled in for the long flight to the mountains. The hauler was designed for efficiency rather than comfort, but it would allow them to cover ground quickly while maintaining the appearance of a routine mission. As they flew through the pre-dawn darkness, Marcus found himself contemplating the magnitude of what they were attempting. In less than 72 hours, he would either be dead or transformed into something no human had ever been before. The scientific implications alone were staggering. If the ritual succeeded, he would become the first documented case of successful genetic integration between species separated by millions of years of evolution. Having second thoughts, Wyxendra asked, settling beside him in the cargo hold's cramped seating. "Third and fourth thoughts," Marcus admitted, "but not about the decision itself. I'm thinking about what comes after. Assuming we survive, what does our future look like?" "Complicated," she said honestly. "The Council will never accept what we've done. We'll face political pressure, social ostracism, possibly even assassination attempts from extremist factions. But we'll also have capabilities that no one has ever possessed before. Our research potential alone will be unprecedented. And the territorial instincts you mentioned, how do I prepare for suddenly wanting to mark territory and challenge other males?" Wyxendra's laugh was soft but genuine. "Carefully, and with my help. The predatory instincts don't manifest immediately. The transformation is gradual over several months as your genetic structure adapts to the changes. I'll be able to guide you through the process, help you understand, and control the new impulses. What about feeding habits? You mentioned needing raw meat. That change is more immediate. Your digestive system will be altered during the ritual to process food sources that would normally be toxic to humans. You'll still be able to eat cooked food, but you'll crave fresh meat, especially during times of stress or high emotion. Marcus absorbed this information with the same methodical approach he brought to all new data. The scientist in him was fascinated by the prospect of experiencing such fundamental biological changes from the inside. The human in him was still struggling with the concept of developing an appetite for raw flesh. The temperature resistance, he said. How extensive will that be? Significant. You'll be able to survive in environments that would normally kill humans within minutes. Extreme heat, cold, even brief exposure to vacuum. Your skin will develop a subcutaneous layer that provides natural armor against most forms of physical damage. Bulletproof, more or less. Small arms fire would be largely ineffective. You'd still be vulnerable to heavy weapons or sustained attacks, but your recovery rate would be dramatically enhanced. The implications were staggering. If the transformation succeeded, he would essentially become superhuman by Earth standards. The longevity alone would allow for research projects spanning centuries rather than decades. The enhanced physical capabilities would open up exploration possibilities that no human expedition had ever contemplated. But there was another side to consider, the psychological impact of such changes. How would his human identity survive the integration of predatory instincts? How would his relationships with other humans change when he developed appetites they couldn't understand? Would he still be Marcus Chun, or would he become something wearing his memories? The consciousness link, he said. How extensive is that connection? Complete, Zewixandra said simply. We'll be able to share thoughts, emotions, sensory experiences. In some ways, the boundary between us will blur. You'll know what I'm feeling before I express it, and I'll have access to your thought processes. That sounds both wonderful and terrifying. It is both. Complete intimacy with another consciousness is not something most beings are prepared for. There are no secrets, no private thoughts that can be hidden from your bonded partner. It requires absolute trust and acceptance. Marcus considered this aspect of the transformation. His relationship with Zewixandra had already developed a level of intellectual intimacy that he had never experienced with another person. Their research collaborations had taught them to think in harmony, building on each other's ideas in ways that produced results neither could have achieved alone. But sharing actual consciousness would be qualitatively different, a merger of identity at the deepest possible level. Are you concerned about losing your individuality? He asked. No. The bonding doesn't erase personality or individual thought patterns. If anything, it enhances them by providing access to complementary perspectives. You'll still be you, but you'll also have access to ways of thinking that are fundamentally draconian. And you'll gain access to human cognitive patterns, which should be fascinating. Your species' ability to find unexpected solutions to seemingly impossible problems has always intrigued me. Having direct access to that thought process could revolutionize my own approach to research. They were interrupted by Kethvar's voice from the pilot compartment. Your Highness, I'm picking up pursuit signals on long-range sensors. 3 military interceptors, closing on our position from the southeast. Zewixandra moved quickly to the front of the hauler, her expression grim. How long until they reach us? Approximately 15 minutes at their current speed. Should I initiate evasive maneuvers? Negative. Continue on our filed flight path and maintain normal behavior patterns. They're probably conducting random security sweeps rather than targeting us specifically. But as the minutes passed, it became clear that the pursuit was anything but random. The interceptors adjusted their course to match the hauler's trajectory, closing distance with the methodical precision of a coordinated intercept mission. They know, Marcus said quietly. Someone identified our departure. Council surveillance must have been more extensive than we anticipated, Zewixandra agreed. Kethvar, How close are we to the mountain range? Still 40 minutes out, Your Highness. The interceptors will reach us long before we can take cover in the thermal canyons. Then, we'll have to convince them we're not who they're looking for. She turned to Marcus. I'm going to need you to trust me completely for the next few minutes. What are you thinking? Shape-shifting. I can take human form, and you can pose as the surveyor I'm escorting to the mining station. The interceptors won't be expecting to find a human traveling with what appears to be a civilian dragon. The plan was risky. If anyone aboard the interceptors recognized either of them, the deception would fail immediately. But it was their best chance of avoiding capture before reaching the relative safety of the mountains. Zewixandra began the transformation, her scales shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Marcus had seen her in human form before, but the process itself never failed to amaze him. Within minutes, she had assumed the appearance of a typical human woman, though her eyes retained their distinctive golden color. Communication incoming, Kethvar announced. Imperial Patrol requesting identification and cargo manifest. Put them through, Alexandra said, her voice now carrying the slightly accented tone she used when speaking standard galactic in human form. The face that appeared on the communication screen was coldly professional, a military officer with the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Cargo Hauler 77 Delta. This is Commander Vexthal of the Imperial Third Fleet. You're ordered to reduce speed and prepare for inspection. Commander, Kethvar replied with exactly the right amount of nervous deference. This is a scheduled geological survey mission. Our cargo manifest and flight plan were filed with proper authorities. Nevertheless, you will submit to inspection. We are conducting enhanced security sweeps due to recent political developments. Marcus felt his pulse accelerate, but Zewixandra appeared calm as she moved into the communication pickup range. Commander, I'm Dr. Sarah Chun, geological consultant for the Korath mining operation. We're carrying time-sensitive core sampling equipment that requires immediate delivery. Any delay could compromise several months of survey work. The lie was smooth and confident, delivered with exactly the right amount of professional irritation. Commander Vexthal's expression remained skeptical, but Marcus could see him wavering. Routine inspection procedures versus potential disruption of valuable mining operations. A calculation that many military officers would prefer to avoid. Dr. Chun, the commander said slowly, your identification credentials, please. This was the moment of greatest risk. Zewixandra's shape-shifting was flawless, but her false credentials would not stand up to serious scrutiny. If the commander ran a detailed background check, the deception would collapse immediately. Of course, she replied, transmitting a data packet that Serthak's people had prepared. You'll find all documentation in order. And, Commander, if this delay costs the mining consortium their quarterly targets, I'll be sure to mention your cooperation in my report to the board of directors. The subtle threat was perfectly calibrated, not aggressive enough to provoke suspicion, but clear enough to remind the commander that mining operations were crucial to the Empire's economy. Disrupting commercial activities without clear justification could have career implications for overzealous military officers. Stand by for document verification, Vexthal said, his expression suggesting he was already regretting the intercept order. Long seconds passed while the interceptor's computers processed the false credentials. Marcus found himself holding his breath, acutely aware that their entire future might depend on the quality of Serthak's forgery work. Documentation appears in order, the commander finally announced, though his tone suggested lingering suspicion. However, regulations require visual confirmation of cargo contents. Certainly, Zewixandra replied without hesitation. Kethvar, please open cargo bay doors for inspection. The young dragon pilot's pupils dilated with alarm, but he followed orders without question. The cargo bay doors slid open, revealing exactly what their documentation claimed: geological survey equipment, core sampling devices, and analysis computers. All genuine items that Serthak had somehow acquired and loaded aboard the hauler. Geological survey confirmed, came the report from one of the interceptor pilots. Cargo matches manifest. Commander Vexthal's expression showed clear frustration, but regulations were regulations. Very well, Dr. Chun. You may proceed to your destination. Safe travels. The communication link closed, and the interceptors peeled away to resume their patrol pattern. In the cargo hold, Marcus felt tension drain from his shoulders as the immediate danger passed. That was entirely too close, he said. But effective, the Whitesender replied, beginning the transformation back to her natural form. Serthak's preparation was flawless. Though I suspect this won't be our last encounter with Council security forces. They're taking this very seriously, Kethvar observed. Using military interceptors for what should be a domestic political matter suggests significant pressure from the highest levels. The High Council sees our union as more than personal rebellion, the Whitesender said. They view it as a challenge to their fundamental authority. If they allow one member of the royal family to ignore their marriage edicts, it sets a precedent that could undermine their control over succession politics. Marcus understood the implications. This wasn't just about two individuals choosing to be together despite cultural barriers. It was about whether the ruling class could dictate personal relationships based on species prejudice, and whether those prejudices could be challenged by determined individuals. The burning mountains came into view as the second moon reached its zenith, their peaks glowing with the reflected heat of the planet's molten core. Even at this distance, Marcus could see the thermal distortions rising from the volcanic vents, creating an atmospheric shimmer that spoke of temperatures no human could normally survive. The Temple of First Fire is located in the central peak, Zoaxandra explained as they approached the landing zone. The journey on foot will take approximately 6 hours through terrain that becomes increasingly hostile with each kilometer. And you're confident you can shield me from a heat? I'm confident I can try. The ritual itself will provide some protection as our life forces begin to merge, but the journey to the temple will test the limits of my ability to share my natural resistances. The cargo hauler settled onto a landing pad carved for volcanic rock, its engine struggling against the thermal updrafts. Even inside the climate control cabin, Marcus could feel the ambient heat beginning to penetrate. Outside the windows, the landscape was an alien vista of twisted volcanic formations and glowing lava pools. This is as far as I can take you, Kethvar said. The thermal interference makes electronic navigation impossible beyond this point, and the engine cooling systems aren't designed for prolonged exposure to these temperatures. You've done more than enough, Zoaxandra assured him. Return to the capital and maintain your normal routine. If questioned, you conducted a routine geological survey and returned with negative results. Your Highness, Kethvar said formally, it has been an honor serving with both of you. I hope to continue our research collaboration for many years to come. The young dragon's words carried the weight of genuine friendship, and Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for the allies they had found among the younger generation. Whatever the outcome of the ritual ahead, they had at least proven that cross-species cooperation could produce extraordinary results. They gathered their final supplies and prepared to leave the relative safety of the hauler. Ahead lay 6 hours of treacherous terrain, followed by a ritual that would either kill them or transform them into something unprecedented. The ancient flames were waiting, and, with them, the test that would determine whether love could truly overcome the boundaries set by evolution itself. As they stepped into the superheated air of the burning mountains, Marcus felt Vexandra's protective aura wrapping around him like a second skin. The heat was still intense but bearable. If she could maintain this level of shielding for the entire journey, they might actually reach the temple alive. Behind them, the cargo hauler lifted off and disappeared into the night sky, carrying away their last connection to the civilized world. Ahead, the path to the ancient flames stretched through a landscape that seemed designed to test the limits of mortal endurance. They had crossed the point of no return. Whatever happened next would determine not just their personal future, but the future of relations between their two species. The ancient flames were calling, and two beings who should never have found each other were about to answer that call with everything they had.